What is up, guys? Rick Hackus here, and today we are discussing The Division and why its myriad of problems has led many people to claim that only a few months after this game's come out, The Division is already dying. Now, I have to address that anytime I make a video even slightly negative, the vast majority of you are absolutely wonderful and I appreciate your support, but I always get a few people saying, "Oh, all you do is complain and I don't want to listen to your rants." Well, I'm sorry, but these are the biggest issues being brought up in The Division right now. If you don't believe me, head over to the Division subreddit and take a look at some of these top voted posts on the Division subreddit. People are not talking about frolicking and unicorns and rainbows and happiness, they are talking about these problems. And as a Division YouTuber, I will have utterly failed my audience if I don't bring up these problems because I'm afraid of a little negativity. So let's get started. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to say something that I think a lot of you weren't expecting. I still like The Division. I still play The Division a lot. Heck, I play it more than Destiny right now, and even though the Destiny April update was actually really good, and I still have a lot of fun in The Division. But that doesn't mean I still can't recognize and, recommend fixes to these problems. I don't know why in gaming right now, it seems that everyone has to fall to one extreme. You either have to absolutely love something and then attack anyone, bringing up problems about that something, or you absolutely have to hate something and then you can't recognize any good things that something does. I think that's ridiculous, and I think that there is a middle ground where you can still enjoy something, and recognize problems within it, or that you can still have stopped playing something or dislike something reasonably and still recognize that it's done good things. And I often find myself in this middle ground. And that's my position going forward in this video. I still enjoy The Division, I still play The Division, but I'm not blind to these problems, and I'm going to bring up these problems because I recognize them, they impact me, and I would really like them to be fixed to overall improve the game. Now let's talk about one of the biggest problems right now really impacting the community. Most people are very upset because of this, and that is the exploits, but not only because of the exploits, but also the problem and the state of the game because of these exploits. Now, The Division historically has been kind of a glitchy game. People getting locked out of their characters for making a backpack. That's ridiculous. People getting through walls. There's been a lot of glitchiness and problems and exploits all throughout this game's history. But this has become a lot more relevant as of late with patch 1.1, the introduction of the Incursion and of gear score. Because basically, there has always been exploits. Like, every time an exploit is fixed, and you gotta give massive credit, they are, fixing these exploits, but every time they do, there's another one that pops up. And although a lot of these exploits are getting fixed, it's almost too late because the problem of what these exploits has caused, which is that it has created a massive gap in the player base of The Division. On one side, there's players who have done exploits to beat challenging mode in the Incursion, gotten the best gear available, and players like myself who haven't done any exploits. Like, I haven't posted any Division exploits, I haven't, done any myself, and that's just more of a, a personal thing, but I'm not even necessarily looking down on the people who have exploited because I recognize why they have, and it's because the loot system is just fundamentally flawed, and we're talking about that in a bit. But just this gap that the exploits have created of the players who are of an extremely high light level and the players who aren't, and this gap is abundantly apparent within the Dark Zone. For whatever reason, and there's really no reason, it's absolutely absurd that this exists, but the top bracket of the Dark Zone right now is like 161 armor plus. Let's just say for argument's sake, it's 160 armor plus. So you can enter into the Dark Zone with only 160 gear score, but you're encountering people who have done this exploit, gotten the best gear possible, and are up to, let's say, 210 gear score. And this is a massive gap. To give you guys the best example of this, we just need to do that same gap mathematically the other way. The difference between 160 gear score and 210 is a gear score of 50. Imagine if you were in the lobby for just a normal hard mode Incursion and someone joined your team who was 160 gear score. You probably wouldn't be that upset by that. I mean, the recommended gear score is 140, 160. I'm sure they can handle themselves. But then let's say someone joined you who is 110 gear score. You would probably kick them. Honestly, you would probably kick them out because you'd be saying you are way too underleveled for this content. Look at how much of a difference 160 is to 110. but that difference is also 50. That's the exact same mathematical difference as 160 to 210. So that shows you just how unbalanced the Dark Zone is right now. 160 gear score people running into 210 gear score people. How do you think that's going to work out? And this is definitely a reason why a ton of players have left the division. Players who have enjoyed the Dark Zone, maybe don't enjoy the PvE content that much, haven't really gone full bore into the Incursion, and are now in a bracket where they're ridiculously outmatched by players who have done the Incursion exploits. And guys, we've got to talk about player versus player combat in the Dark Zone because I think it's absolutely terrible. Now, I like the Dark Zone. I like the idea of going rogue. I like going into the Dark Zone. I like the atmosphere. I like supply drops. But I'm just talking about pure player versus player combat. And I think what really sums it up is, I think most of you would agree with this, 99% of fights in the Dark Zone are decided by who pops Survivor Link at the right time. Like, that might be a slight over-exaggeration, but I think some definite truth holds true, because it really is. If you have one group versus another group in the Dark Zone, most of the time the winner of that battle is going to be decided by which team uses their Survivor Links the best. And that's because you get melted absurdly fast in the Dark Zone. All your grinding, all that gear score, all your, blueprint making, doesn't even matter. Some guy who's done the exploit with 210 gear score walks up to you and melts you with an SMG in the blink of an eye. And that's really absurd. There needs to be some substantial rebalances in player versus player combat in the Dark Zone, because everyone just walking up, because if you're planning on going rogue, you have such a massive advantage because you just walk up to someone as a non-hostile agent, plug them in the back with your vector, again, in a fraction of an eye. They don't even have time to react, and there you go. They have now 3 group members, and you have 4. Therefore, you have more survivor links. Therefore, you are massively favored to win that gunfight. It's as simple as that. And speaking of the Dark Zone, this transitions perfectly into talking about the loot system, because, only a day or two ago, I did a big Dark Zone run with 3 other people, so I had a full group of 4. It was great. We were in the level 32 areas the entire time, and we extracted a crap ton of gear. I honestly think I extracted almost 30, like it was 25 or 27, high-end items, and it was the same for all of my different group members. And again, we were in the level 32 area for the entire time, and I got 0 out of 27, 32 armor pieces or gear pieces or anything. The only things I got like 3 pieces of gear that were 182 gear score. Everything else was 163. Everything else. Even though, again, we were in the top area of the Dark Zone. We were in the absolute top, most difficult area of the Dark Zone, getting shit loot the entire time. And it wasn't just me. All of my group members, none of them got a 32 drop. The only things they got were 183 gear score items, and it was only like 1 or 2 or 3 items of those each. How absurd is that? So the drop rates for the high gear score items are just absurdly low, but this isn't even the worst part. I wouldn't mind a 163 god roll of something. I wouldn't mind a 163 god roll AUG or a god roll, M1A or even an M44 or basically any gun or any armor piece. I would rock that all day long. But I just wasn't getting it. No one was getting it. Pretty much everyone. Every time you go into the Dark Zone, you are deleting everything. And that's because the way the loot system is organized, and this game kind of has the same problems as, honestly, Destiny does, where you have just woefully unbalanced perks. Guys, you have perks that give you a 13% chance for the first bullet of a magazine to light someone on fire. Okay, that's, in some world, maybe it's a little useful. And then you can also get perks in the same spot that have 24% increased headshot damage at all times. This is unbelievably unbalanced. These 2 perks are so catastrophic. They're not even in the same world. They're not even in the same fucking galaxy. They are so woefully unbalanced. Like, clearly, 24% headshot damage all the fucking time is better than a 13% chance of 1 bullet lighting someone on fire. What the fuck were Massive thinking when they designed these perks? And because of that, you have the same problem that, again, somewhat Destiny does, where every single person is looking for the same exact perks on pretty much every single gun. right? If you get an SMG, you're looking for the same like 3 or 4 perks every time, and you're deleting 99% of your SMGs because some of the perks are just terrible. That should not be the case. Every perk should be somewhat usable. You can have perks that don't affect damage and affect skill power, but they have to be substantial enough that you're willing to give up 24% headshot damage. Every single perk in the game should in some way be able to compare to 24% increased headshot damage with the brutal perk. That's what it should be. It shouldn't be perks that are just woefully worse. And that's leading to a ton of problems in the game because people who have gotten lucky and have gotten the god rolls are just walking gods in the dark zone. Massive needs to rebalance this loot system because you have a loot system with a ton of different diversity, and it really is quite a diverse loot system, but somehow in all this diversity, everyone's looking for the exact same things. Another problem with this is that stamina doesn't really do anything. Yes, if you have incredibly low health, that's bad, but, it's really not worth making an entirely stamina-based build. You could have 100k plus stamina, and you're still gonna get insta-killed by a rusher in the Incursion, or a sniper, or just an LMGer shooting you for, 2 seconds, or everything. Because everything kills you so damn fast in the endgame that it's just absurd. And it's a horrible feeling when all of your hours and hours of grinding and crafting and all of this stuff, and you have this awesome gear set up and you're spec'd into stamina even, and then a rusher gets behind your team and kills yourself and all your team members in a fraction of a second. That shouldn't happen. The endgame enemies need to be rebalanced because in the game right now, I have to say it guys, everything that makes the Division hard also makes it fucking annoying in PvE. Like seeker mines, grenade spam, rushers and snipers insta-killing you. It's just absurd. They need to introduce more tactics into the game, even like time-oriented activities, rather than just throwing a bunch of rushers and snipers at you and fucking 10 million seeker mines and just saying, oh, good luck. I do have to give props to Destiny where props is due. Destiny does have a very good way of increasing the difficulty with not making everything insta-kill you. If you're looking at the Destiny raids and Destiny boss encounters, a lot of the time it's difficult because there's a lot of crazy mechanics going on that you need to be aware of, you need to communicate to get all of these mechanics done with. Again, rather than, the Division increase in difficulty, which is just, oh, we'll make everything kill them even faster. But even with all of that being said, I still have hope for the Division. I'm looking forward to seeing what their actual first DLC is. Remember that the Incursion added was just in a patch 1.1. They haven't even added a full paid DLC yet, so I'm interested to see what is going to be included in that. I'm also hopeful because with a few changes, you could really improve the game. For example, like right now, one of the biggest problems with the loot system, I didn't talk about it too much in this video because I talked about it in another video talking about are SMGs overpowered, but you have gun types like light machine guns that just are not being used. They just don't do enough damage, they just aren't being used. If they patch light machine guns, and if they really up the damage on some of them, and suddenly, if you get good M60 rolls, if you get good M249Bs, and all of that stuff is suddenly relevant to the endgame, suddenly it's really good. That's gonna shake up the game like crazy. That's gonna make people go back to the game, look at their inventories, go after those light machine guns now. That's gonna be a really positive thing with a really simple change. So with some simple changes, making the drop rates more plausible for the higher gear score items so that players can catch up to the players who have exploited. Making the dark zone, endgame dark zone, more different brackets than 160 plus, which is just ridiculous. Adding some new perks or updating some of the old perks to make them better able to compete with the insanely good perks and diversifying the game. All of these things are not ridiculous requests and they wouldn't be that hard to implement, and all of these things would drastically improve the game. I also really want to see new gun types added with the next DLC rather than just new named guns that already exist in a gun type category. So, is the Division dying? Well, kind of. Massive has really let their game slip, and honestly for me, I'm a YouTuber with, 250,000 plus subscribers. My friends list on the Xbox One, which I play the Division on, has almost 1,000 people on it, and trust me, I'm not even trying to brag here, I'm trying to prove a point. I still have a hard time getting a group together on the Division right now, because a lot of people who used to play this game are not playing this game anymore for the reasons that I brought up in this video. I can't imagine imagine what it's like to not have a massive friends list, just be, a normal bloke trying to get a group together. You're going to have trouble because, again, many people have left the game. The game is kind of dying, but it can still be revived if the problems that I brought up in today's video are addressed. And again, they aren't ridiculous requests, and they aren't ridiculously difficult things to do. To fix them, this game can definitely bounce back, because at its core, it's still a very fun, very good game. I love the concept at its core. That concept needs to be improved upon, and the things around it need to be improved upon. Another key issue within the Division is the fact that every time we're getting a new patch, apparently the gear score is increasing. This is exactly like, a level increase or the light level increase in Destiny. And the problem with this is that all of your old gear becomes irrelevant instantly as soon as that new gear score is released. This is a huge problem, and the solution is something that, Destiny did as well. Introduce infusion, right? Introduce the ability to take a, 183 weapon that you don't want and infuse your 163 or even purple weapon up to 182 or 183. Adding the ability to sacrifice the higher gear score items that you don't want to increase the gear score of the items you do want is really going to help with the grind in the Division. Now that's it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, and if you agree with what I'm saying, please remember to spread the word by simply rating or sharing this video. Now if you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.